Version of the Australian Business Podcast. Good to have you with me.
Always.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Always, yeah. We're running on a fair bit of technology today. We've got Daniel on his iPhone, which is super crisp, the new iPhone 15. Is it a business expense or a personal expense, Daniel? How do you treat that?
Oh, it is completely business. All our softwares are linked to the phone. Our office phone links to my mobile, like it's all done through an app, as well as my legacy clients who can't forget my mobile that call me at all hours. So it is mostly work. I don't really do anything else throughout the day except for work. So it is a business expense, yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. Like it. Jordan, you're recording at the work office. The office, and we've discovered your internet is probably the issue, not the webcam that we've been. You've gone out and resourced, but that's okay. We're all here.
Just
We just made the connection. The internet was like, oh, sorry, you guys on Optus? So many businesses were affected by Optus this week. I was trying to have meetings. It's pretty insane. I don't know if you guys had to cut any meetings this week, but I definitely had to cut a few because people couldn't connect. So
you know what was funny about that as well? Well, not funny. In hindsight, it's funny, but the reliance that we have on the little things like even maps. My partner had to go and see a client and she had to stop at like 3 different places to connect to Wi-Fi to work out how to get to where this meeting was. So it wasn't just the phone calls, but even like things that we don't think about, like maps.
Yeah.
Bring back the book directory in the side of the car, I say.
yeah. On the dashboard, it's like 5 years old and doesn't have the latest stress. Those things. It's crazy how, as someone who studied like computing and networking at uni, I remember thinking to myself, the whole world is going to the internet and away from like radio and all those other mediums. How amazing that is for like businesses and for countries and people. But how dependent we are on this one network, like being the internet. And the backbone of that is like the telcos, right? Like the Telstra, Optus in Australia. We don't really let Huawei do anything anymore in Australia. So just basically those two. And it's just insane, like the redundancy. I don't know if I was saying to you guys, but at home, because I rely on the internet so much, we have the Telstra NBN. We paid for the fiber to the premises. We paid extra for that. You can do that. Maybe that's an option, or probably not an option for your office, but you can actually pay extra as long as you commit to 3 years at the premises. The telcos often will install it. And then we also have our hotspot for our phones, like we're doing today. And we have Starlink as well, which you can just start and cancel when you want it. So that's kind of cool.
How's the speed on that on Starlink?
It's super fast if you want like downloads and that. It's just the you see the dish moving, like it finds another satellites going overhead, and what happens is there can be up to a 5-second delay when that happens in your bandwidth.
Right.
But it makes up for it, so you don't lose a lot of frames, but it's probably not the best for streaming. A hard wide connection's the best. But anyway, every week we answer some questions. We've got a question today about how to buy a cafe, which is a question we kind of get a bit on the show. It's like, how do you do that? So we'll talk about that. But the other things that we've been working on is we try and bring, a learning to the community every week, things that we've discovered this week, mistakes we've made, whatever. Jordan, maybe start with you, mate. What's been on your mind? What have you been doing?
This week been focusing on email marketing. And I guess one of the key learnings for me was that it doesn't need to just be used as a marketing tool. It can also be used in operations in terms of like client onboarding. So the way that we used to do it is still got the Halloween names. The way that we used to do it is we'd send out like a Word document and then the client would have to send it back. But what we're building out at the moment is just an email with a form, essentially the same fields as what the Word doc was. But now it's just much more streamlined and there's less margins for error, human error. So I've been building that out.
So you're sending client requests and data like sourcing through ActiveCampaign? Is that what you're using?
Yes, that's what we're moving towards. Yeah, ActiveCampaign is the software. And the reason for that is there's probably two reasons we were speaking about before we started. Is one, the email function is fantastic, and it also gives you CRM functionality. So like to manage leads and conversations and whatnot. So that's the reason we went for ActiveCampaign as opposed to maybe a MailChimp or Pipedrive and whatever the other ones are.
So do you use Pipedrive as your CRM?
No, so now we just use I use ActiveCampaign as a CRM too. It's got like dual functionality.
Yeah, cool. That's one of the things that's super powerful about Drip, which is what we use, is that you have super powerful automation and email marketing, but it's basically a CRM. Like if you don't need Salesforce and that extreme like depth of data and expense, frankly, you can go with something probably like ActiveCampaign or what we've done, which is Drip, and you can automate and also collect forms, embed forms and stuff. For anyone using a WordPress website, you can embed it with Elementor if you use Elementor on your website. And you can do that for ActiveCampaign with Elementor as well. So you can collect all that information straight from your website without having to manually collect any of it, which is really cool. That's good because that will save you a lot of time, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, heaps of time. Just trying to automate the process as much as we can, just so nothing gets lost or left behind. Because as we continue to scale and scale up, we just need to make sure that there's nothing falling through the cracks. So that's why we're focusing on that. I'm just looking at Drip. Is that for service-based businesses and for like your e-com type stuff, product-based businesses?
It's more product-based businesses, so it's more like e-commerce businesses. But we use it for all of our digital assets. And you could use it for service-based. I don't know how effective it would be at that sort of stuff, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's like a massive step up from anything else. So obviously you guys are a service-based business. What were the options that you were considering of like software?
It was ActiveCampaign, there was Pipedrive, and there was MailChimp.
Yeah.
And there was one other one, but I can't remember what it was called. It was mainly for product-based businesses and like influencers and that type of stuff.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, MailChimp has over 50% market share. It's $1 billion a year business. It's now owned by Intuit. So you can see where they're trying to take it, right? They're trying to take MailChimp into the realm of full CRM accounting software, like the full business suite in one place, which is kind of cool. And you said, just finally on this, you said that you saved 25% on this software by paying up front.
Yeah, I think it was 20 or 25%. It's something we've actually started to move towards with all the software subscriptions. Now that we're a bit more established. At the start, it's just trying to keep those upfront costs as low as possible. But as we've started to get traction and establish ourselves in the market, it's something that we've started to do. And the savings are quite significant. I mean, there was an app the other day that we were looking at, and there was a saving of 40% over, like, and that was huge because I think it was like $1,000 US. So on that app, we saved 40%. Whereas, rewind 2 years ago, we wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't. So that's something that we've started to do now, is just wearing this cost up front as opposed to 12 months and having a saving. Because all the software that I see, every time you pay it annually, you always save money.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't think of anything where you don't save money for paying it annually. But I was just trying to think, like, it'd be pretty hard for something like Drip to, because our database is pretty big now. It'd be pretty hard for them to accurately forecast what our costs are going to be. I feel like you might pay overs or unders. Like, I don't know, because like MailChimp does an estimate of your billing, which is, it always annoys me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's interesting because ActiveCampaign's the same. I'm just looking at it now on the billing page, and like we get X amount of contacts, and then it scales up. So I think it's just a top-up payment. Maybe it's a top-up payment. I'm not too sure how that would work, especially where there's seats or contacts that determine how much you pay.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to. Yeah, we easily pay over $1,000 a month, easily. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I think because we've got so much automation running through it, they've got us by the short and curlies. They have us, and we can't move. So it's a super good business model for them. I'm just looking. Sure. There are comparisons on all of the websites. I'm sure they all favor one way or the other. But here's a comparison between Drip and ActiveCampaign for anyone watching. I'll bring this up on the screen. So most of the websites have these product review pages where you can put two things side by side. Just maybe go to each of the websites to view what actually is happening. So this is obviously on the Drip websites. There's a big thumbs up for Drip. But yeah, go and check it out. It took me ages to find this. I was originally stuck on MailChimp for all digital marketing, and then I was like, oh gosh, I got to get off this ASAP. It was just clunky. But one of the things I noticed before, mate, was that with ActiveCampaign, it's got an AI sending tool, which I've never seen before from any of them. I'm sure they'll all integrate this eventually, and it adjusts the sending time of the email based on when the recipient is most likely to open it, which is super powerful.
For sure.
Yeah, when you think about that, like we normally just in the marketing industry, it would normally be like Tuesdays and Thursdays are good days. Like send it in the like midday or arvo. Those are great days for sales emails. But if you could,
That's so true.
if you could send it based on what each individual person is doing, that's incredible.
Yeah, even on that, what I find sometimes is you can tell when certain businesses are using the same platform because you get emails at the exact same time. And the interesting one, the most recent one was the RBA rate rise on Tuesday. If all the brokers sent out the same email essentially with maybe 5 or 6 variations and like at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And it happens for that. Black Friday is very similar as well, where you get 5 or 6 emails at once and you're not even going to look at it. So the fact that ActiveCampaign can identify when you're on your phone the most and you're most inclined to buy or make a purchasing decision is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed with the new MailChimp thing as well, there's a new tool inside MailChimp. I think it's called Creative Assistant or something. I could be wrong. When you create a new marketing list and you're a new MailChimp user and you just link your website to MailChimp, which you have to do anyway for them, it will automatically read the website's like look and feel, and it will port all the images and all the look and feel and the font across to your email software. So it kind of replicates what's on your website, and it does it without you even doing anything. It just automatically picks up on that. So you don't even need to design your email. It just does it all for you, which is kind of huge time-saving hack for anyone that's starting down this road.
For sure.
Cool. So Daniel, what have you been up to this week, man?
Well, as you can tell, Jordan handles all of that for us. And I'm sitting there and I'm like scratching my head. I was like, oh, I didn't even know we did that. I don't even know what software so Jordan just gets it done. It's fantastic, actually. With me, we've actually gone through a bit of a transitional period with some senior staff members. So we've got one leaving us, unfortunately, but we do have someone else joining the team. So that's been a cool process going back and forth. I always hate setting up computers, to be very honest, between all the software, sending invites, going back and forth, verification codes, 2FAs. Yeah, chaos. So that actually took up majority of my time. Whenever I had a spare minute to work on the business, that's what I was doing. Everything else was work-based. So now that we've got a really heavy, call it manager level, he's not even a senior accountant. He's definitely more than a senior accountant. He's, in context, been a chartered accountant for 25 years, coming in with a wealth of experience. So we're looking forward to having him on the team. He's done 2 days for us and they've been very impressive already. And we're looking forward to sort of bringing on board. So a lot of my week was just back and forth with the lawyers, just making a few adjustments to employment contracts, onboarding new devices, new logins, computers, getting all that sorted, and then sorting through the workload of transitioning from one manager or one senior accountant looking after it to the next, and just making sure the notes are really spot on, just trying to make sure no one, is missed, I suppose.
Do you we're talking about this. Do you have like a system for this?
In like a workflow system?
Yeah, for onboarding?
No, not onboarding. We haven't had to onboard that many. We haven't had to transition any positions as of yet in the last sort of 2 years. And we've onboarded a couple employees, but they've been so staggered and it hasn't been too hard. I definitely felt it this time around. So I think creating a process for us now is going to become really, really important, especially with the growth that we're seeing, and we're going to have to start onboarding more people. I think it's important for me now to sort of sit back, figure out what my pain points were during that onboarding and actually create a process for the next one. That's probably on me now to identify where the sort of the key inefficiencies were.
For anyone that wants an onboarding like process, just general one, There's a link in the show notes to the free business course. In there, there's a section on HR documents, and you can just download all the documents that we use at Rask. So this would, because like, I think people underestimate how long it takes to onboard someone by at least 50% every time. Like you're like, okay, after 2 months, they'll be fine. No, 3 months, 6 months. It's just takes so much longer than people realize. And so having any type of process helps there, right? So like for us, we have like, if you go to the Xero website has something for this, like an onboarding checklist, like it shows like, what is the leave policy? Where is this? And it's just a checklist to guide you through if you're the manager. And then assigning someone as like the onboarding person. So like even if they're not their manager, they're the person that kind of buddies up with that new team member. It just takes so much stress off the person as you as a business owner, but it also gives responsibility to someone.
Yeah, for sure. I think the hardest thing for us as well is because in that position, being a manager, you hold a lot of relationships with clients as well. So it's a lot of that as well, introducing the new staff member to clients. That takes up quite a lot of time too. So
we took that old manager off client communications as soon as he hit his like notice period. As soon as that went on, it's like no. Every email comes through me. Every meeting that was booked, phone call that needs to get scheduled, that now comes through me until we've got that new team member on board. So that was, again, you're taking an extra, obviously there's a lot less meetings than what we take, but maybe an extra 20% of meetings throughout the couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. It's not easy. So the more
we got there.
automated that can be, we're still
here.
alive.
Yeah,
we're here, we're doing it.
Just
yeah, it was funny. I actually had the couple meetings I did have with some of the clients. They were like, I can't believe you're taking this call. Like, it's so basic. I was like, it's got to get done. And I think it's one of those things for business owners where, regardless of how small the task is, it's up to you to make sure it's done, whether it's by someone or yourself. So it was, it was cool. And
it's good chance to touch back with the customers that you might not have spoken to for a while as well.
Yeah,
so they
absolutely.
appreciate it.
So true. What's been happening with you, Owen? How's your week been?
It's been a long week, man. So if I don't look tired, I am. No, it's just been it's too pixelated to tell. No, it's been a long week. Like, I think one of the lessons for me this week is I've been working on something for about 10 or 11 months, just in the background, and we're relying on a party to help us, like a tech and finance platform to help us with that, and that business is basically gone up for sale. I could put it that way. So meaning that business that we were relying on for everything has now reached a point where it's like, well, we're going to go up for sale. So they've had to reduce some staff members and put everything on the back burner while they go through the sales process. And this is right when we're about to launch this new service for our community. So I've hired people. I've got 10 months of time and energy committed to this. And then at the last moment, the party that we're relying on can't fulfill their end of the bargain. So basically it's what we call in any type of business, we call it counterparty risk. And like one of the things that I thought about, because I've got it on the top of my mind, when you said, Jordan, that you get 25% discount on, or 40% discount on that app, I was like, geez, that's pretty steep discounting. I wonder why they need the money so much. Or maybe it's just to get people in the ecosystem. But I think, like, as a business owner, you have to always be aware of who you're dealing with, particularly when you get to scale. Is like, is this business viable? Like, how much of my business is dependent? Like in investing, when we look for companies to invest in, we're looking for businesses that are called mission critical, meaning that they're like services or products are like, they are ingrained in their customer's life. And so, for example, imagine if for me it was Drip, or for you it was Active Campaign went down, or Xero for you guys. Imagine if that went down, right? So
I'm packing up my things and leaving.
Yeah.
I'm walking out the door.
I'd age 30 years in 2 days, I reckon.
And that's why I own shares in Xero, full disclosure. But if that happens, then your business, what impact does that have on your business? And that's what we call counterparty risk. And that's a huge thing that people underestimate, because as their business grows, I don't think they place enough emphasis on it. So I put in place steps for this. Like For this particular business, I wanted financials. I wanted like pitch decks. I wanted like I had numerous calls with the team. I deliberately slowed down the process of onboarding. And also, I did things like reference checks on the company that we're getting into business with, like called existing customers, emailed existing customers, did all of this. And still this happens. So, that's just the reality. And now I've got to deal with that. So now it's going to probably, I don't know, it could take 1 month, it could take 6 months to figure out. So such is life, such is business, I guess. You can plan and plan and plan, but then sometimes shit hits the fan, so to speak. So that's where I'm at. Been a hell of a week. Counterparty risk. Who knew? So 2 other things we wanted to talk about. One maybe is the question, which we'll get to in a minute, guys. But just quickly, this idea of using credit cards to fund a business is really interesting, because in the consumer land, like when we're talking about like people getting credit cards to buy a fridge or a TV, it sounds stupid. Like it sounds crazy unless you're fully in control. Even then, like we don't talk about it much at Rask because of that reason, that people can't control themselves. But in business, we hear about it happening all the time. Businesses getting credit cards, businesses earning rewards, businesses, getting loyalty benefits from having a business credit card. So I guess for you guys, do your clients typically use credit cards?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of either credit cards or overdrafts, whatever it may be. We personally, like Daniel and I, use a credit card for the business, and the main reason for that is just for the travel benefits, given we do a bit of traveling for work, and like those benefits are points. Like when we're traveling for work, and just to like only talking about work here, not using those points personally, but for work, there are times where we won't have to pay for flights. And yes, the flights are a tax deduction, but at the end of the day, you're still paying the money. Hotels as well, you get discounts at hotels. So they do have their pros and cons, and like it's really important that you're still paying them off at the end of the term. So like we always pay it to zero every month. They're not for everyone, because some people, whether it's buying a fridge or it's investing in your business, it's like if you don't pay it outright, you're still going to incur interest regardless. Although that interest is tax deductible, it's still a cost that you're incurring. So it's a fine line. As long as you can stay on top of it, they can be great, but they can also be detrimental as well.
Yeah, I think to sort of touch on one of the points you said, Owen, I think using it to fund your business, I would go completely against it. Credit cards are there to be a tool to help benefit your business, whether it's to extend your cash flow periods. So let's say, for example, you have to wait sometimes 60 days for an invoice to come through. A credit card becomes really useful in that scenario because, let's say, for example, the Amex one, there's a 55-day period from paying something to making the repayment. It's aligning the invoice, sort of your debtor days, with when you're actually spending the money. Because a lot of the time, especially in some of the larger, call it construction companies, they need to do a claim on the 20th day for the next month that is then paid the month after. Like you're talking about 60 to 90 days payment terms. Whereas things still need to get paid for the job to continue during that period of time, not just for that invoice, but for the next 2 invoices that you're going to incur for the next 2 months worth of work. Cash flow becomes really difficult. That's where credit cards are useful. When you know the money's coming in, you're using it from a time basis. If you're getting a credit card to, call it, spend on the business just for the sake of spending on the business, hoping you're going to generate more revenue, that's when it becomes a very dangerous game, because these aren't long-term loans where you've got small repayment periods over a period of time. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend $10,000 now. Guess what? Next month you're paying it. Whether you like it or not, it's got to get paid. You start accruing too much debt. Like ATO debt, it is so hard to recover from as a small business. It's not like a simple, I'll just make the money and we'll recover. It's unfortunately not that simple. We've seen clients go into liquidation because of credit card debt. It just got too much. It just got too out of hand. So I think funding a business with a credit card, very difficult. Using a credit card to enhance what you're currently doing and create better efficiencies and improve your, like, call it cash flow, that's generally the best benefit for it. I think that's a really good tool if you know how to manage it, like Jordan said.
Yeah. It's like be careful with it, right? With
Well,
great
use it for a purpose, not just like for the sake of having a credit card, or even for like a point system. It's like, oh, I'm going to make points on it. It's like, yes, but that shouldn't be the sole purpose of it. The purpose of it should be to retain as much cash as possible, or if you're getting paid too slow, to help deal with the debtor days that are too much. There's other benefits that the credit cards can have for you.
Yeah, it's one of those murky areas where you talk about it and people might go and use it for the wrong reasons, right? I think you should also shop around, like Daniel mentioned Amex before. That's what I've got for Rask, but there are other options that everyone will be willing to offer you if your financials are looking good. But just be very mindful of how you set it up, the interest periods, the terms, that sort of stuff. In terms of overdrafts, do you have many clients that do overdrafts for their business?
There's a couple. They would usually want a lot more security than a credit card. Like some of them would want a property of some sort, because the amounts can generally be quite large and it's a revolving facility. But I'd say credit cards are definitely more common than the overdraft because it's just a lot easier to get them.
Yeah, spot on. The barrier to entry to credit card is very, very low, whereas an overdraft, they want a longer period of trade. And like Jordan said, sometimes they want security. They want more or less a full doc application like any other loan. But the people that do get it, there is a benefit to it, because with the credit card, you can't pay wages. I know there's apps that link to credit cards that help you sort of do that, but an overdraft can help you pay any bill, whether a credit card can pay it or not. Like, call it wages. Wages is probably the best example to use here. If your account gets low, you can go into it to make sure that your staff and their super and all the things that are important are paid, because credit cards can't help you in that department.
Yeah, fair. That's a good point. Okay, guys, so we've got time for one question, this was a good question that was sent through. So let me just get it up in my notes here. And it come from, I think he gave the name Dirty Dan. I'm assuming it's a he, could be a she, who knows. So Dirty Dan says, "Hey guys, I'm looking at buying a business. I work in hospitality and have for nearly 10 years. And having my own business is something that I've thought about in the past. Just the other day, I saw a cafe come up for sale that seems like a good opportunity. I've sent out an inquiry to the broker and I'm awaiting a reply. Just looking for some advice on what to consider when buying a business, things that might not be so obvious. Thanks." Guys, you do this as your bread and butter. What do you think? Where do you start?
I'm happy to sort of kick off a few touch points, and then if you guys want to bounce off them. I'm a big believer in using your current skill set, so I really like that this Dirty Dan's focusing on an industry that he knows, right? He's saying hospitality. I'm assuming it's got something to do with the restaurant cafe game. So that component, I think, is a massive tick in my eyes, industry relevance. If you're looking for a few things that might not be so obvious, whether you like it or not, the cafe game is a cash game. There is a lot of cash that is funneled through those tills. And when you're wrapping up financials, you've got to be careful. You can't just rely on the reports that an accountant gives you, because there's a lot that an accountant does not see. A client just does not tell them, it's not disclosed. I would be looking for their Z totals off their point of sale machines, off their tills, and using those to wrap up. Figure out what the associates are taking, because they generally do take a significant. So let's say, for example, an owner like, I don't draw a wage from the business, I just work and whatever profits. Yeah, that's because they're probably taking cash out of the till. Whether you like it or not, ATO knows it, we know it, everyone knows it. It happens. It's hard to monitor. It's hard to detect. So that's why the Z totals are really important, because that's generally speaking, like a manual receipt that comes out of the machine on a day-to-day basis. I'd be focusing on those totals, not the total revenue the financials give you, especially for a cafe. A few other sort of key things is staffing. You notice we've seen cafes that have been purchased and key staff members leave and follow the previous owner. And as soon as that happens, the sales drop. Whether it's a barista that knows every single customer that comes in, knows their order, and just provides a great service overall, that person heads off. You get a replacement. Might not be as good at making coffee, might not know the customers as well, might not be that personable. That impacts sales. So when buying a business, key staff is really, really important. Making too many changes is hard. So like if you're going in, don't expect to flip everything on its head, I suppose, because it does impact things. What else can you look for? Look at the wage ratios, see what the turnover is to the wages, whether it's efficient. Look at staff turnover to see what the culture of the workplace is like, whether people stick around for a long time, whether they don't. So there's quite a lot with cap. It's a tough game because it's not as contractually solid as, let's say, for example, a professional service game where people generally don't move that often. Casuals come and go week to week.
Yeah. I'd add maybe as one thing that happens with cafes a lot is leases, is understanding the legal, I guess, framework that you're stepping into. So where the lease is, how much that is, if there are incentives or if they're going to roll off, like if the landlord has, put in certain things that might not necessarily be in your favor. So maybe you need things like a grease trap in a cafe, but they don't want to put it in, so you've got to put it in, and which will cost you, but for their benefit. When does it roll off? What are the scheduled increases, if any? And then the other legal agreements that might come into play, like you said, employment contracts. You might want to do something with the business owner where it kind of like restricts them from competing with you in the nearby area. You get legal advice for that, as well as any like leases on equipment. So coffee machines are super expensive. They're usually on a lease. Those types of agreements where you get your coffee beans from, where you get your supply from, all of those things you want to know, and you want to get a complete picture before you roll into it. And those are really important because the lease is a huge cost for these businesses. Cafes are low margin businesses by their nature, so low profit margins. So you need to know what the big lumpy items are that go into making that small profit. Jordan, anything else?
I was going to say restraint of trade as well. I think that's really important, but you mentioned that. Even little things like going in there, more from an operation side of things. And I know Dirty Dan has been doing it for 10 years, but it'll be really good to go in there for maybe a month prior to handover, and just familiarize yourself with everyone, even sit there for a full day and just take note of everything that's happening around you. More so from an operation side of things. And a lot of the time with this stuff as well, the owner will stay on for a certain amount of time. I think it's really important that you do that so there can be that handover for customer satisfaction, which is what Daniel spoke about with that barista. If that barista was to leave, it's chaos. If you can have that manager stay on for a month or two and they're just on a wage, you would agree to pay them a wage of X amount. I think that can be huge as well, just to retain those customers, assuming he's not going to, there is a restraint of trade and he doesn't open up next door and then you're in trouble. But even those restraint of trade clauses, we've seen them struggle to hold up sometimes in court. So you just got to be careful with that.
Yeah, and they do. Sometimes they do. And that can apply for employees as well.
Yes.
But the thing is, like, it varies by state and by how the restraint is interpreted. But you just want to. Sometimes it's enough just to put people off from doing it, right? And I find that's a deterrent more than anything. But I think that's such good advice. Imagine like you go in on day one, you haven't had a handover period, and you're trying to find the keys to the till, you don't know where they are. Like these little things matter as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the things you don't think about until you're in there. And that's why it's so important that the owner stays on for a period of time so you can try and work all those little things out.
Yeah. And I would say finally is, even though something's come up, might be availability bias if we apply some psychology to it. Just because something's come up in your area does not mean that you need to buy it. Location plays a huge part in the success of businesses, but that does not necessarily mean that they're all located within your existing employment. I wouldn't buy a cafe unless I've looked at 10 others. Like it's a big commitment. So look at just these brokers often do service a few. You can go on seekcommercial.com.au. I think we've done this before on the show. Go to Seek Commercial and just search for cafes in the CBD or wherever you are. And you'll probably find that it's like 20 or 30 of them. That's the reality. And then the other thing you can do is like, if it's too expensive, you got to consider the price. So get your accountant to help you with that. But if it's too expensive, what's the cost of just starting from scratch? You got to weigh all these different things up. So
and even just on location, one of the biggest things that we've seen in the last couple of years is these cafes that used to run a huge trade in the city. And I think this will be regardless of Sydney or wherever you are in Australia, is like the numbers are so much lower now because everyone's working from home. So it's really important to find that location where you need traffic and foot traffic, because that can, it can break your business if there's no traffic.
Yeah, we had Joe Malloy on the Australian Business Podcast from Rumble Coffee Roasters a while ago, and a big coffee roaster in Melbourne supplies a lot of cafes around the country. And he was saying in the wake of COVID, it's kind of weird because the really good cafes in the CBD, like the really good cafes, the ones that people seek out, they're still as busy as ever, because when you come into the office for 2 or 3 days a week, you'll go to the cafes that are good and you can't get closer to home. It's those second and third tier cafes that simply don't have the same, I guess, traffic that they had before COVID. And that's, if you're looking at the financials, and you get 5 years worth of financials, you might see historical results that were really good, but haven't been repeated in recent years. So take that into account. Cool. And finally, are you buying a business or a job? As Daniel said, the earnings, maybe the existing business owner isn't paying themselves a proper wage. You've got to be really careful with that. All right, guys, if people want to get in contact with you, there is a link in the show notes or below the video. Soon, not right now, but maybe soon, it will have an active campaign form there. And it will say, we're going to onboard from the Australian Business Podcast. And then you can give Jordan some feedback. You can be like, mate, there's a few spelling errors here. Don't know what this bit is. I haven't heard from you. No, but seriously, you can get in contact with Grey Space Advisory for small business, sole traders, companies, however you're running your business. Get in contact with Jordan and Daniel over at Grey Space. You'll find more info on them in the show notes. Well, gents, Friday. This is a live.
It was a pleasure.
See you again next Friday.